Hi, this is Paul, and the person I'm talking to today, a good number of you will know. I first kind of bumped into her on Twitter because we were talking about similar things, and Richard Rowland had made the comment to me that, oh yeah, you should talk to Annie because she's going to teach a course at Symbolic World, and she's into this stuff, and she's a Protestant still.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I'm not going anywhere. I don't think it's a problem. But anyway, that's just me. So we're going to get to know you. And Annie was farming for questions she should ask me on Twitter. But what do those knuckleheads know? I want you to ask questions you want to ask. So don't worry about Twitter. Um, but let's I and as someone said, I'm going to be asking a lot of questions, which is the way this thing. How many Randos conversations have you watched?
Just a couple. Part of my struggle with the this little corner, which I enjoy, is just the way there's so much content. And then as someone who teaches full time and still has kids in the house, it's hard to keep up with everything. So not as many as I would have liked to.
Okay. Well, I first have to ask the question, why are you in a wood shop?
Oh, yeah. Well, because this is where I can get away. When my daughter moved back from college, she kind of took the room I was using as an office, which is great. I'd rather have her home here with us. That's great. And so we kind of set up a little desk out here in the shop where when my
Uh,
husband's home, he can do some of his work meetings and then I'll come out here to podcast. So it's a little bit of an unorthodox background, right? But it makes for a good conversation starter because
well, we
there's a lot of tools in here. I don't know if you
that's
know.
a lot of tools. Michael Sartori has done a lot of things from a wood shop, so it feels right at home. It feels right at home.
It
How many?
suits my obsession with Matthew B. Crawford, right? The
Okay, right.
top classes soulcraft guy.
So, how many children do you have?
So I have three daughters who are about to be 20, 21, and 23. And my oldest and youngest live at home full time, and my middle is at Grove City College studying cello performance.
Cello performance. Well, I have five children, and my oldest is 34, and my youngest is 25, and the only one that lives at home is the youngest. And he really wants to get out of the house, but he hasn't been making enough money to get out of the house. And so, but I think he just got a raise and a promotion at work, so I think he'll probably be heading out. But I love having my kids at home.
I do
So
too. I love it. And we still have dinner almost every night together and have great conversations together. And my daughter, her boyfriend was over last night and we were chatting about this and that. And, I think isolation, I think that, you want to grow up. You don't want to be living in your mom's basement and not developing and not maturing. At the other hand, on the other side, we're not all individuals and automatons. And it really kind of is to other people's profit for all of us to be paying independent mortgages, right?
yeah.
So I think it's good for us to be like creatively rethinking what extended family relationships look like in healthy ways, right? And as daughter, I have all daughters, so and I grew up with all sisters, so I don't, I don't know what it is to have a brother, and I don't really know what it is to raise a boy. I imagine that the dynamics are a little different.
Wow. Well, we might talk about that. My wife and I, we have a dream of a compound, and we got at least I think we've got half of our kids, half of five. So that means some of them are kind of on the edge. I think we got half of five that are down with the compound, and especially my son and daughter-in-law who are definitely planning on having children ASAP. They are really down on the compound because they're like, well, then we get babysitting built in, and it's like, yeah, grin. So
Exactly.
anyway,
Yeah. We dream about that too. And we're already like, you gotta kind of you hope you work, but you also have to have it be invitational and
yep,
allow your children freedom, right? And so I
yep,
think the girls are like, well, it depends on who we marry and
yep.
kind of how that plays out. But we'll already talk about like, one is gonna run the ducks and the other is gonna do, the garden and we'll see how it all plays out.
All right. Well, let's get on with the business at hand. Tell me about the home you grew up in.
Oh yeah, this is my least favorite topic. So uh,
Oh, now I'm really interested. Let's hear it.
yeah, well, I'm an idea person and I find it hard. Every time I've done a podcast, the like, tell me about yourself is like the worst part. So I am,
No,
but I
tell
feel
me
like,
about the home you grew up in.
oh no, I will. Yeah, you're right. You're avoiding already, Crawford. Yeah. So, I grew up in, yeah, a broken home.
Mm,
Was born in the Scioto area, kind of Willamette Valley, just south of, Salem. And my dad is an electrician, and my mom is a professional pianist. And they divorced when I was about six, I think, 5 or 6. So, kind of, there was this like 5 year period, of those formative years where I was the baby of the family. Um, my mom, but my dad had an older son and daughter from a previous marriage who were 12 and 11 years older than me. So that kind of initial formative years was like I was a baby and I had this older brother and sister that kind of have vague remembrance of, my brother playing basketball and doing pull-ups in his room upstairs. But then about 6, they all went away. And it was kind of that they went away. And then I had a new baby sister named Abby. And so she's my only full
mm,
biological sister.
mhm,
And then my mom remarried my stepdad when I think I was about 7,
mm.
and we moved into Salem. And then my mom and stepdad had another daughter named, well, I'm not going to say people's names.
No, that's fine.
Um, and so, kind of, then the bulk of my childhood grew up as the oldest kid, as the oldest daughter with a 5 year old, my one sister's 5 years younger, and then the other one is 8 years younger. And so, like,
Wow.
I think that, when people do the like birth order stuff, I'm
Yeah.
like, I have some of the baby issues. I have some of the oldest kid issues. I have some of the middle kid issues because the way
Mm,
that that sort of played out versus formative years versus kind of bulk of childhood. So, um, I think my, for a season, my memories were all in black and white. Not
hmm
interesting.
hmm
Where does it? I've never heard of anyone else for whom that happened, but I remember there was this picture. My dad did some photography, and there's a picture of me and him uh, working on a pod. I think no, at the beach, and it was in black and white. And because when they got divorced around 6, my dad moved to Alaska, and he was struggling with a cocaine addiction. I don't know, other stuff. So he disappeared to Alaska. My brother and sister had disappeared to Alaska, and it was so like this. My whole life that was the first 6 years sort of like disappeared. And I think like in my
mm,
imagination, it became this like black and white
hmm
other world.
hmm
Um, and then I was plopped into this new world. And I think some of how that affected me was at that pivot point at 6, I just didn't really bond with anyone. Um, Dad disappeared. I wasn't allowed to take the name of my stepfather because then my dad's family would disown me. My grandma really wanted me to be a Brownell and not to be, and I understand that. But for a 6, 7 year old, this is confusing. So I grew up, I didn't ever call anyone dad because I didn't know who was supposed to be my dad. Because I guess this guy was my birth dad, but he kind of was something in my kind of a fairy tale imagination that disappeared. And then the stepdad was providing for us, and holding things together, and a real nice guy, but he didn't want to usurp a position he wasn't supposed to have. Right. And so I called him Billy, and I called my dad when he came back. He got sober, came back to Oregon when I was about 11, 12. And then he would be real intentional of every month
mm.
or two having me come to Portland, and he taught me to ski. And so we would ski together. And so it was kind of like, though, but having a nice uncle who took me skiing. And so I called him Pa because I was like, well, I want to honor you as my dad, but I don't really feel like you're my dad. And there's this guy holding together a home who's a really nice guy, but he's not proactively a dad either. So I'll call him Billy. And so I kind of grew up, a major part of my upbringing was this, you know, ambiguity about father figures, or lack of a clear father figure, or need for a clear father figure. So that's definitely a big a big part of who I am. And I think right now how it manifests is like, now that well, skip ahead just for a second to see how this pertains to, how people encounter me on X or in the TLC and conversations is, after God did a lot of work in my life and by his grace brought me into a healthy marriage. I've had a lot of healing in this place and the benefit of being married to a really good man. And I just see the importance of good men and the role they play. And so want to be someone who cheers them on, cheers on young men and speaks publicly about the value of men, right, in our context where so many of them feel marginalized or criticized in their masculinity. So as someone who really suffered the lack of a strong male figure in my life, I want to be an encourager to men in that way. So I'm going to pause there, let you
Well, did
prompt me.
your was there any religious observance either in the home before six or then with your stepfather and your mother, let's say between six and being a teenager? Did you go to church at
Yeah.
all? Did you identify in any religion?
So my mom's parents were very strong Baptist Christians. In fact, my grandma was one of like a prominent leader in Child Evangelism Fellowship. Do
Hmm.
you remember that
No,
organization?
no.
And so they did a lot of VBS kind of stuff. And so grandma made sure that every summer I was going to some kind of VBS and she would pay for me to go to Bible camp. I can't remember the specific name of it. And so grandma made sure, I was evangelized and I knew my word list book and I memorized scripture. And so grandma really encouraged that, which I really appreciate. And I think my dad, my mom in those early years, I think they were going to some kind of community church. Um, I remember like meeting in like some room in a bigger church where we'd all sit in a circle and we'd sing kind of Maranatha songs. And then, so that I kind of have a vague memory of that. But then when my parents got remarried about 7, we started going to an Episcopal church. I think my mom, again, she's a professional pianist. She's an artist. She's a
Yeah.
great painter. She actually did work on creativity and did some speaking and writing on trying to bring, creativity into the church and doing creativity seminars and stuff. So her best friend was also pretty artistic. And so they were drawn to the Episcopal church, right? The liturgy, the beauty, the bells and
Higher church.
the scents. And we went to a gorgeous church. It was all beautiful wood and stone everywhere. And our priest could actually cantor well. So it was just musical and beautiful.
Mm.
And I loved it. And so that had a profound effect on me because I think I really encountered like sacred transcendence in that space. I was an acolyte. I loved carrying the incense. I loved, kind of like kids want to be called up. I loved being challenged to be part of the service and sit there quietly and just really absorbed kind of experientially the sense that there's a transcendent holiness, sacredness that's real. And I'm invited into kind of a posture of awe and before it. And that growing up in Oregon as someone who, I mean, I just love the outdoors. I was always in the woods. I was always running around on my bike, exploring everywhere, getting into the mountains whenever I could. And what that Episcopal background helped me do is connect the beauty and transcendence I encountered in nature and in the mountains with the Christian God. And so I think a lot of people have a disconnect there, but I was
Yeah.
really fortunate in like at a very young age having a strong connection there, right? And what that meant, with my grandma's, so that connection point in terms of the sacred, my grandma's like, you know, um, determination that her children would be biblically literate.
Yep. Yep.
What that did for me is then when my life fell apart and shit hit the fan and I get into college and I completely unravel emotionally, I had some idea of where to turn,
Mm.
right? I didn't have a bunch of fundamentalist baggage. I actually had some connection points that I could pull on. You know, it took me a
Yeah.
while to figure that out, but I feel really fortunate in that way that I
Yeah.
wasn't in a place where I felt the need to rebel against um a dysfunctional church in some
Right.
way
Right.
or anything like that.
Right. So you do go to college. Where do you go to college?
Yeah, I'll back up a little bit.
Okay.
So my mom, being this artist boomer, was
Yeah.
pretty just preoccupied with herself,
Hmm.
right? So I've got an absent dad, and then I've kind of got a mom who loved, like, she would do holidays really well because that when she
Hmm.
could be artsy about the holidays. But like I don't remember ever talking to her about my friends or my feelings
Mm.
or anything. So I'm really growing up in a home that looks fairly functional and loving, but
Yeah.
very emotionally, relationally isolated.
Mm.
But my mom's like, oh, well, you're getting straight A's and seemed happy. So I figured, everything's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so how I kind of coped with, again, I don't really know who's supposed to be my dad. I don't really have an emotional bond to my mom. The two things I love are, well, my sister, who I just happened to, we shared the same parents. She's really, I like to talk a lot, and maybe you can tell on Twitter, I like to spar and play with words, and my sister can equal or exceed me in verbal wordplay, right? And she's really fun that way. So I bonded with her. And then my aunt rode horses. And so I'm not exactly sure. My aunt and grandma are kind of like a little bit of old school East Coast people.
Hmm.
So there's certain things that are the right thing to do. So I
Hmm.
got a Reader's Digest hardback book every birthday and every Christmas because any intelligent young woman who is hopefully, they're kind of feminist, right? Is going to grow
Yeah.
up as an intelligent young woman. And so for Christmas, I would get hardback copies of
What decade is this in?
80s.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying. I mean, you're a little younger than I am, so I'm just
Yeah.
trying to kind of locate you
Yeah.
in this cultural atmospheric river
Yes.
we have going over the last 60 years. So,
Yeah. Yes. I was born in 77. So like childhood in the 80s, teenager, college in the 90s.
all right.
Um, and so my grandma just thinks, I don't know why, they're just like, Annie should ride horses. So I mean, what little 10-year-old is gonna be like,
Oh,
so, yeah.
my
So I rode
daughters would have
horses.
loved to have done that.
Yeah. Expensive sports, guys.
Yeah.
Don't get into it without some sober awareness. So like my grandma helped pay for lessons. My aunt helped pay for, it was kind of a team and effort. And I worked at the barn. My first job was working there at $4 an hour to try and pay for like the shows that I would do and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that horses are used in therapy a lot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They
Because
are.
they mirror you emotionally.
Yeah.
And so I think that this little 10-year-old girl who felt real isolated emotionally and nobody really knew, the horses created this space where, I could start to have some kind of emotional. This is why I don't like talking about myself because it's hard
It's
to go
okay.
through these stories. But that was a space where I could be more emotionally present in a safe space, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing I loved about it was in English, it's just highly disciplined. And so my home, broken home, kind of passive, nice guy dad. I mean, I love my dad and my stepdad very much, and I'm still close with them, so I want to tell my story in a way that's honest, but is also honoring of them.
Absolutely.
Um, but mom, artist, chaotic, doing her own thing. Like yeah, there's all these stories of like we tried to get a dog for a little while, a German Shepherd, but we couldn't have good enough boundaries to like keep the German Shepherd in the
Um,
yard, right? So we had to get rid of the German Shepherd within a year because we were too kind of chaotic for a dog to function in that environment. So
yeah.
what I found at the barn was there was a right way to do things. There was a system, almost a liturgy that
Yep.
matched what drew me in the Episcopal Church, this liturgy where I felt this sacredness, this holiness. The barn had a kind of liturgy, but a liturgy of discipline that helped me feel that the world could be structured and knowable, and that within that structure you could move forward rather than kind of the home, which felt lonely and isolating and chaotic.
Yeah.
So and then what I found out is that I was smart and I could get straight A's. So what I kind of threw myself into is, how am I going to feel that I have stability, security, identity? I'm going to be at the barn as much as possible. I would even like spend the summers there, like sleeping at the trainer's house when I could. And I'm going to get straight A's and show, kind of, again, kind of forge a path for myself. And I think that's what happens for women or girls who don't have a clear father figure providing coverage for them. You feel your vulnerability and the need that you have to make a way for yourself and take care of yourself. And so I was so that was me going and through high school is at the barn, straight A student at school. And then okay, well, what about after high school? How am I going to make a way for myself and take care of myself? And so I'm going to go to the best college that I can, because that's just the way that I know to like achieve and create
Absolutely.
stability in my life. Right. And so, I mean, I didn't even visit schools, Paul. I was like, what's the best school? I'll apply there. I didn't even visit.
So you go to Harvard, Wellesley.
So I got into Stanford, the West
Okay.
Coast squirrel, right? But even then it was $30,000 a year,
Yeah.
and in the 90s, my
That's a lot of
stepdad,
money. Yeah.
he was like, I would love you to be able to go there. He's like, I can't pay for it. And I was a good student, but I'm a white girl. I'm not getting any kind of major scholarship to Stanford. But my grandma, God bless my grandma, she's like, well, I'll pay for half of a Christian school. So I was like, well, that's a way to. So one of my grandmas had given me, the one who gave me the hardback books. And it's so funny. She always had her nails done. She was always smoking. She was telling me the right way to file my nails, the right books to read. And she gave me a trust fund. And then when I turned 18, she put it in my name. She's like, you need to learn how to manage money yourself. So, you know, so I worked with her investment banker, and she's like, here's some money for college. You manage it. You grow up. You figure out how to do it. So she gave me a little money. And then my other grandma's like, well, if you go to Christian school, I'll pay for half of it. And I'm like, well, what's the best Christian school, Paul, in the 90s? What do you think?
Calvin College, not
Oh,
Wheaton. You went to Wheaton, didn't you?
well, yeah. So I ended up at Wheaton because I didn't realize I was led astray. But I didn't even visit. I did not even visit. I was like, that's the best school. How I'm going to provide, security and a future for myself is achieving,
Yep.
achieving, achieving,
Yep.
achieving. And but at least I can pay for this one, right?
Yep.
'Cause I think the part of my like need to take care of myself was a terror of debt. So I went to school for
Makes
six
total
years.
sense.
6 years, Paul. It took me 6 years to do my undergraduate because,
You were
uh,
working so much because you didn't want to have any student debt.
well, no, actually, but I still left with only $3,000 in debt after 6 years.
Why did it take you 6 years? You're clearly smart, and if you weren't avoiding working so much avoiding debt, why did you just take more classes, or what did you do?
So I go to Wheaton, right? And then it was this very interesting experience where I'm independent. I'm going to take care of myself. I don't have a lot of emotional attachments except to my horse and my sister.
Mm,
And I get to college and I realize
oh
I am
boy.
horribly, horribly lonely,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
And because of the dynamic with my mom, I'm not great at making female friends. What I am good at doing as someone who likes philosophy and banter is making male friends.
Oh.
Right. And then I have this big daddy shaped hole. Right. So that sets me up to be just sitting bait for, the first decent guy who's going to come around and give
Yeah.
me the kind of fun attention that,
I've been
that I
craving.
don't have anywhere else. So that was actually a guy at home I met the summer before going to college. We just had a blast. We like hiked every mountain in the Pacific Northwest. He was funny. He helped me have fun which clearly I'm a like type, you know, I'm driven, and lonely. Here comes this guy who is super fun, and I'm just bait, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure we've all seen
I,
it before.
I completely understand. I'm tracking with you. Keep
Yeah.
going.
So I make it 2 years at Wheaton, and I just go home because,
Because of the guy.
yeah.
Oh no. Oh no.
I mean, but sometimes like I don't know how to make healthy female friendships. I don't know how to build a healthy community network for myself at Wheaton, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, and so I'm just, you know, and I'm taking 21 credits because I'm achieve, and
yeah,
I just burnt out, and
yeah.
it's like a rebound. So I just moved back to Oregon, and for a semester, I don't do anything, but by the, you know, this guy had um not gone to college and just sort of slowly fallen into Northwest alternative culture. And then he sucks me with him, right? So that the last year so I'm only at Wheaton 2 years. And then that second year, I mean, he's coming to visit me and we're dropping acid on Wheaton campus, you know, and so it's just
Ooh,
things are not going well, Paul. I'm really falling apart in a lot of different ways, right? So I just go home and for a semester I work at the Olive Garden, smoke dope, go to rock concerts high, and then try to and and I'm just there, right? What do I do?
yeah.
So I what do I do? That summer I and so I ended up enrolling in University of Oregon because I'm like I'm torn, right? There's this I'm being pulled into a place where I at least am having fun and having relationships and my emotional needs appear to be tended to. And then I've got my achiever side and terror of poverty. and so I end up enrolling in the honors college at University of Oregon because that's kind of the highest level I can achieve at this chaotic stage in my life. And so, and then my boyfriend moves down there to Eugene. He's gonna go to community college, and you know he's got some friends there. So we've got a little very unhealthy friend group in Eugene, and I'm going to school. And I did a summer abroad trip. But somehow I finagled this boyfriend into going with me. And that was we just fought the whole time because
Mm,
I think there's something in me that was like, I can't give into this whole lifestyle. I know it's meeting an emotional need, but I know better. I don't actually want this. Um, and like the low point of my life as I moved in with his friends, it was a crack dealer and her lesbian or bisexual girlfriend, and I lived with them. And what I remember is like when my parents moved me in, they were just like horrified because I'm moving into this house, not in a safe or nice part of Eugene. It looks like it's full of squalor. And like just one example is I remember the only thing that there ever was in the fridge to eat was they would make these parfaits of like mayonnaise and hot dogs and mustard. So, like, for me, this is like, but like, what am I doing with? How did I get here? Like, how did I get to living with a crack dealer and and her lesbian girlfriend eating mayonnaise and hot dog parfaits, Paul? Like, how did this happen? Um,
we've never had the hot dog mayonnaise parfait on Randos, but we've got a lot of similar stories. So,
yeah,
but
yeah,
never a hot dog mayonnaise mustard parfait. That is new. It sounds sort of uniquely American too. I can't imagine that arising anywhere else in the world but America.
yeah. Yes, I have this real horror of mayonnaise, so I think it really imaginatively stuck in my soul.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So we we were on this trip in Europe, right? We just have a huge fight. Just we're fighting all the time because this isn't what I want,
Right,
really, right?
right.
And I'm trying to figure it out. So I remember being on a train in Italy. This is back when you'd get the Eurail pass,
Yeah,
and how we traveled the continent was we would just sleep on a train at night and end up
yeah,
in a new city during the day, and we
yep,
just did that.
yep.
So I remember one time we had a fight, and divided our packs. I was like, putting my stuff in my pack and your stuff in your pack. And when that train stopped, I was going to get off and never see this guy again. And then I realized I am a 20-year-old woman alone in Europe, and that's not a good idea.
Yep.
And so I stayed with him, finished our trip, but as soon as I got home, broke up with him, and I was like, I have to figure this out.
Yeah.
And so just spent the rest of college trying to figure it out. But at that point, part of being sucked into that culture was being sucked into New Age. I was reading the Celestine prophecy. I was reading the Bhagavad Gita. I was reading all this, Eastern stuff. And my Christianity had morphed, as it does through all that drug use, into a kind of pantheism and all this kind of stuff. And so religiously, that's where I am, in a kind of Eastern perennialism. But I have a couple demonic experiences that just scared the crap out of me. God in his mercy and his grace allowed me to have some very demonic experiences where, I'll put it this way. I swear I saw a Nephilim, and it scared me so much that I grabbed my friend and just drug him to the car and made him, sorry for the thumbs up, made him drive me to another friend's house. And I swear, in the drug-induced state, that took 5 years. Just so that, or another experience I had, if people know Oregon, there's the country fair, the big druggy hippie fair that's out in the country near Eugene. Everyone's high and playing their didgeridoos and wandering around. And so I'm here at the country fair, and I heard the voice of Brahman say it was time to release my consciousness into the world soul. And again, I'm terrified. And it was with the droning of this didgeridoo, and I felt, it's like I felt my consciousness slipping away from me.
Wow.
And caught it, like what felt like as I caught it at the last second.
Yeah.
Grabbed it back in, and then held on to it for another 5 years until the drugs wore off, And again, like I'm the crazy person in the bus trying to get back to my house, like probably just like this, holding on to my consciousness until like I can get home. So a couple experiences like that the Lord used to, as a little spanking of, this is not the way of life. You need to repent, turn around, and rediscover, right, the paths of life. But that took a little while. What it ended up taking was dating a guy who was Christian enough. Again, I've got this father-shaped hole, right? I don't know how to, now that I've kind of emotionally cracked, right? Because I, all through high school, was pretending I'm fine, I'm independent, I don't need anybody, I don't need anybody, I don't need anybody. Then I crack, and I'm like, oh, I have a lot of needs. I need, like Bob Wiley and what about Bob? I need. Yeah.
Bob, yeah.
And so I just am dating guys. I'm just using men because I don't know how to I don't know how to deal with my emotional side now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm so sorry, all the guys that I dated when I really wasn't serious, like men use women and women use men.
Yeah. Yeah. They do. It goes both ways.
Both ways, right? Yep. And it goes both ways. And so I apologize to all those people. I was just lost and didn't know what I was doing. But yeah, like dating people in order to just have emotional juice, right? To get through the day. And end up dating a guy who was lost enough to date me, but Christian enough to move me in that direction.
Yep.
And a pivotal moment for me was, he was, the Eastern kind of New Age mentality will say that fear is our biggest problem, right? That we are good and
Star Wars.
Yeah, and it's really just fear that prevents us from love. Yeah. So there's no pride or sin or it's very Rousseauian, right? It's just fear of social pressures or stigma or whatever.
If it was just all me, it would be great.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
There's no
So I,
Augustine knocking on the door and saying, "Are you sure about that?"
yeah, exactly. So I bought into that. I was, philosophical, debating me, arguing that fear is the basis. But this guy I was dating was like, no, it's not. It's pride. It's pride. And he just, he was hot and good looking and a lot of fun as well. And so, coming from his mouth, the whole pride is the root of evil argument, started to make more sense again. But, God in his mercy, I do think, convinced me of that and reawakened me to the reality of sin, which,
Yeah.
as C.S. Lewis says, is the prerequisite for finding the joy of the gospel,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so he reawakened me to that sense of sin, but he ended up breaking up with me. He's like, you have a huge hole in your heart. You're not a whole person. You don't know how to have a relationship because you're not a whole person. Well, I mean, this was just devastating because here he had started to turn me back toward an interest in Orthodox Christianity and a desire to start moving on that path and pulling my life together, but then named this empty space I still had, right? And said, that's not going to work for me. In some ways you're like, it was, in some ways it felt cruel, right?
Yep.
Like, give me a chance to grow. In other ways, I see, ultimately, it's the Lord's severe mercy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And Lamentations 3 has become a really important verse for me. It is
Mm.
good for me to eat dust. This will be my paraphrase, right?
Yeah.
To bite the dust when you're young, because
Yeah.
then there's still hope, right? And the fact that, again, it just is a severe mercy, but that God allowed me to really completely fall on my face and come to a total end of myself
Mm-hmm.
is what allowed me to um, move into all the blessings that I have now.
Yep.
Right. And yes, okay. So if I let's say I kept dating this guy, could I have grown into more and more maturity? But it would have been a hard road because he was my idol. Like,
Right.
right. He was my emotional, um, what's the right word to say? Source.
Yep.
Um, and I really do think that the healthiest relationships, ultimately it's about my soul before God.
Yeah.
And I have to come to find God as the source of my strength and my being alone,
And not a
right? Though
man.
he slay me, yet I trust him,
Yep.
right? That's the foundation upon which a life can be built, right?
Yep.
So that was really tough season in my life. I think, after he broke up with me, I just remember feeling numb for 3 months,
Mm.
but then slowly, um, two things that the Lord used to stitch me back together and help me make that transference, right? Like, okay, sweet child, you grew up lost, you've tried a few things. Let me help you, come to the fountain, the well that never runs dry. One is I did a trip to Alaska. Just I was like, I need to think and what where do I know to find life? Well, in nature, right? Because at this time I'm not going to church. Once you've been dropping acid on Wheaton campus and running around on shrooms and the redwoods and arguing that fear is the source of all evil, you're not going to church anymore in the 90s, right? So where did I know to go? To nature. So I hopped in my car and I drove, must have been 4 days straight without stopping anywhere, just sleeping in my car when I needed to, smoking clove cigarettes to stay awake, straight to Denali National Park.
Wow. People don't realize how big the West Coast is. And
It was
because people are like, I want to drive to Alaska. It's like, oh, really? It's a long ways.
if I'm remembering correctly, it's 4 days of you know,
Yeah.
13, 14-hour days,
Big days.
big
Yep.
days, right? So, I mean, that was just how, but I wasn't, it wasn't hard and I wasn't tired because that's how much angst I had. Again,
Mm.
like Forrest Gump, where, his world falls apart and so he starts running,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
right? And he just
yeah,
kind of, I was
yeah,
running
yeah,
until he just hits and he's like, I think I'm done now. And
yeah.
I mean, that's me in the car. I was like, I just got it. I started driving and I drove and I drove and I drove and I drove and I got to Denali State Park and I got out and I started hiking. I started hiking. I started hiking. And then I slipped and fell on a scree field and almost like fell a couple thousand feet. I'm alone in Denali State Park. Nobody knows where I am.
Oh.
And so that was kind of the last, like, I hear, sorry,
This
I
is the
have
makings of a bad national park story because this stuff happens. I mean, people think it's a park. Yeah, but it's a certain kind of park where
yeah,
you can get
oh
yourself
yeah,
killed.
oh yeah. I mean, there's moose, there's wolves. It's
Yeah.
late September. There
There's
could be
big bears, not the
a
little
freeze.
bears we
There's
have here in
bears.
California.
Yeah. It was just shows you how dumb you are when you're young, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Or, oh,
yeah.
apologize for that. I don't know. Usually my um anyway. So yeah. So I kind of slipped and fell, and I think that was again another, one of those awakening moments, where I imagine
Oh, little
God,
master of the universe.
yeah,
This little field of rocks can do you in. You're not such a master of the universe.
yes. And so I just kind of sat down, and again I just thought, I give up. I just give up. Like
Mm.
little, you know, me cannot be independent. I can't make a way for myself. I can't do this.
Yeah.
And I just sat down and I thought I would just stop existing. Like I had so much kind of in my soul and imagination thought that I took care of myself, that when I gave up, I would somehow pass out or not exist anymore. Or remember me holding on to my conscience as Brahman is trying to like suck it away, right?
Yeah.
Just such a deep sense that I am the one holding it all together, that when I finally let go, it was like, how am I still here? How am I still here? And it was this visceral experience of like, oh, honey, the Lord carries us. The Lord sustains us. He really is the God, who is there. He really is. And and so then I just got my car. Paul, I just drove back home. I like hardly stayed in Alaska at all. I mean, really, it's like my Forrest Gump moment, right? I just should turn around, go home now.
Except you didn't have all these people behind you like, he's going to speak. He's going to speak.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. So then I drove home and who do I go to? I'll give you a guess. I go to grandma. Grandma,
Yeah.
hey, what do I do?
Yeah.
So, um, I miss my grandma.
Yeah.
Um, so she pays for me to go to a Europe Bible School, Ecola Bible School.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard of it?
I think I've heard of it. Yeah.
Um, it's in Cannon Beach, which
Yeah. I've
is
been to
the
Cannon
most
Beach.
beautiful little coast town.
It's great. My wife and
It's
I love Cannon Beach.
Yeah. Yeah. So I grew up, so my mom, as a pianist, we would go there and she'd be the pianist for one of the, there's the
Uh,
conference center there.
yeah.
And so I grew up going to the beach. And so that was a like familiar place, positive place. And they
Yeah.
have their year-long Bible school where they, one of those, you're right out of college, you're not quite ready to go, or you're right out of high school, you're not quite ready to go to college.
Yep.
Go do a year of, you know, biblical
Yep.
studies and theology while you're at the beach. And so it was kind of me going back to some maturing that I just didn't do. So
Yeah.
so I was one of the older students and that was a little humbling, but it's okay. I learned how to like have friends and not based off sexual manipulation, right?
Yeah.
Not competing with women for the male attention.
Yeah.
Like the Lord had stripped me of all of that.
Yeah.
So I was coming in very humble,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
The Lord is the source of my life and he is my father and Christ is my savior and he's the one carrying me and providing. So I could just come in humbly and say, all right, I'm going to learn I'm going to spend time in prayer. I'm going to spend time walking the beach and making actual friends and learning how to do that. So that was a super good year at Ecola Bible School. And they, they had like Mission Week, right? So at Mission Week, you have all the like pioneers, pioneers and frontiers and all these missional organizations. Again, this is in the 90s, and maybe it seemed like I don't feel like I see as much of this now, but it was a big deal in the 90s if you're in Christian circles to go do a summer mission trip,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I was out of the country in most of the 90s
Okay.
but yeah, we had all kinds of summer mission trips down in the Dominican Republic. So
Okay. Yeah. Well, you were on your big mission trip in the
yeah.
which which I haven't heard about, and would like to hear more
Okay.
about that sometime.
Well, you keep going.
Okay. So I'm like, oh yeah, we should do that. Here I am kind of pressing authentically for the first time as an adult into Christianity and what it is to be a faithful Christian and what that looks like. And mission seemed good. So I'll do a mission trip. So I sign up for a mission trip. Now I'm not so sanctified that I have any qualms about going a place that I want to go. So I sign up for a trip to Nepal because I'm a mountain girl. I'm an outdoor girl. Why not?
You drove to Denali. Why not go to Nepal? I mean, it fits.
That's right, it fits. So I signed up for this trip to Nepal.
Even though certain someone wants you to, go on.
Well, if you really love the Lord and you were, I don't know, which denomination fits this, Kantian Christian, you would go to the place you least wanted to go because the purity of the duty is what would make it really virtuous, right?
That's right. That's right.
But I've never been a legalist. That's not one of the things I've struggled with. So
So you go to Nepal.
Yep. And so we stop in Florida first for our training, right? So 5 days of training about in Florida. And because I guess I'm the oldest, I don't know, I'm picked as the team lead for our team, but 9 to 10 people who are going to go to Nepal. And I'm kind of the one who just coordinate and lead our small group breakouts and stuff until we get to Nepal. And then I hand off to the missionary that we're going to meet in Nepal. And so I meet our team, and there's this guy on the team who is from Texas. Now, Oregonians have a lot of prejudice against Texas.
They
right?
do. They do.
They do. So here's this guy from Texas, and he looks like a frat boy. And all I hear him talking about is golf, and that he likes to play golf. And so I'm like, who is this Texas frat boy who just seems to be interested in having a good time? And I don't even know if he's serious about this mission work on this mission trip, right? Because the type A, if I'm going to get an A+ in summer mission work, Paul, right? So I invite our small group to pray. I think, we have our small group, and then the leaders get together. How are your small groups going? And I have the leader team pray. I was like, there's this guy in my group, and I just think he's just here to have a good time. And so we need to pray for him, right? Well, okay, this ends up being my husband. This is who I married.
Sounds like a rom-com.
So we get on this trip, and we just he actually is from Texas, but part of his family goes to Colorado, and so he grew up going to the mountains every summer and mountaineering, and we just ended up hiking together for basically a mission trip to Nepal is you hike Nepal and pray for people in the village, and just kind of learn about the culture and pray for people. And
okay.
So I ended up hiking with him for a month, and we became best friends, and I told him my whole story, and he, didn't think that I was a second-class Christian for having, had struggles, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that really impressed me the most was when we got to India, it was hot as Hades, no AC anywhere, really kind of just an oppressive environment. And so India was just rough, and I was still learning how to trust men and trust myself with men, and that's a bumpy road.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
Sure. Especially on mission trips.
Yes, right. So there's
a lot of mission trips. There's a lot of voltage flowing through wires, and those wires aren't too far away from each other in the brain between the religious emotions and the romantic emotions. And
yes,
it's a lot of Christians meet their spouses on mission trips.
Yeah. And And I don't really know yet how to deal with all that, right? Remember,
Yeah.
I've just had 1 year of learning how to like
Be a person.
be a person,
Yeah.
a stable person
Yeah.
in my relationship with the Lord, and then like the beginnings of relationships with women and healthy people. And so I'm just like 1 year into this.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a lot of wisdom or strength or maturity on how to deal with, yeah, that
Yeah.
those wires crossing and those closed spaces. And he kept
Yeah.
sitting next to me.
Yeah. Of course.
so, so in my, yes, elevated maturity, I just started being kind of a nasty, mean person. Instead of talking about it, I would just ignore him or be short-tempered or
It is a rom-com.
it kind of is now that you say it.
That's
So
beautiful though. That's beautiful. Keep going.
yeah, hey, rom-coms resonate with people for a reason, right?
They do.
Yeah, they're saying something true. So he's like, hey, can we talk? He takes me out of the hall and he's like, you're being unkind and it sucks. And why are you doing that? And I just thought, no man in my life has ever loved me enough
Yeah.
to call out me on anything ever,
Mm.
except for my like horse trainers, you know?
Yep.
And I
Yep.
just thought, well, that's someone I can trust. I
Mm.
got like, I was in charge of my life and I drove it into the ground,
Mm.
right? I know that I need someone who is, again, I was never disciplined at home. It was like, oh, as long as, you seem to be running around happy and getting
Yep.
good grades.
Yep.
And actually I was a mess, right? Nobody loved me enough to discipline me much. I mean, my mom would get pissed and then like slap me and say, I love you, but I don't like you.
Mm.
I was like, okay, well, that wasn't that helpful for, figuring
Very
out
productive.
how to how to do life. So the fact that this was the first guy in a personal relationship with me who would confront me on a fault, love me enough to save me from myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
that caused me like to trust him, right? To
Mm.
trust him. And then so when we got home, we just kind of dated long distance and were married 11 months after we met.
Wow. What a nice story. That's
A
a
fun
beautiful
story.
story.
Because
That's
he was from
wonderful.
Texas and I was from Oregon and we were both graduating. So it was just
Yeah.
the timing of it was like, well, God's either throwing us together or he's not.
Yeah. So how long have you been married now?
25 years.
25 years. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So you did finish your degree from Wheaton?
No, from
No.
University of Oregon. I went, so
University
after
of
Bible
Oregon.
school, went back and finished up. I've ended up with a Bachelor of Outdoor Education, Environmental Science, with a focus in outdoor education, a double major in philosophy and a minor in literature, and then
Wow.
my Bible study certificate. I used my 6 years well.
You did. You did. You used them very well. You used them very well. I've seen people use a lot more time, a lot less profitably. So you did very well.
Yeah.
Um, so where did you move and what kind of church did you go to after you
Yeah.
got
So
married?
yeah, that last year at college, I just ended up at a Foursquare church because that was the best campus ministry at
Hmm.
University of Oregon, right? So I Bible school, pull myself together,
Yep.
go back, finish my degree, know that like I got to plug into a church, just
Yep.
what church has some kind of healthy, active ministry. So I did Foursquare, and met some real sweet friends there. And then we got married that summer and he was looking for jobs in Oregon because I mean, who doesn't want to live in Oregon in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
But it was the dot-com crash. And so the only job offer he ended up getting was here in Austin, Texas. And so he's a double E electrical engineer.
Yep.
And I'm clearly my outdoor ed degree is not paying the bills. So we're
Hey,
gonna,
Texas horses. There's a thing there too, you know?
yeah, oh yeah, no. So moving to Austin was definitely culture shock
Mm.
for real. But thank God it wasn't Dallas, like I don't know if we would have made it. But so yeah, one thing that's helped me as an outdoor person be content in Texas is horses. I'm like, well, you know
Mm.
what? Flat country can be used for that.
Yep. 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 They got horses in Texas. They really
Yeah,
do.
they do. They do. That's good horse country. So we
Yep.
moved, yeah, we moved here because he had a job. So get this, Paul, as the pastor, you'll see the import of this. We graduate college, move to Austin, get married, move to Austin, start our first full-time office jobs. And I got pregnant all in 3 months.
Well, making up for lost time here, getting right
Yeah.
down to adulting.
Yeah. So it was whiplash, right? So we were
Yeah.
like, and as soon as I was nauseous for like 3 months straight, right? So it was a rough entry into adulthood because
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I was working at a dental office doing working in the office, making appointments. You probably know enough of my mind to know how well that works for me. I was so god awful bored and so nauseous. Like it was just rough. And then he's getting used to his new full-time
Yeah.
job. And
Yeah.
so that was we made it.
Yeah.
And once that little kiddo is born though,
Yeah.
right. The kids
Yeah.
make everything worth it. And she's just cute as can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So did you homeschool right away?
yeah.
How did that occur to you? From your
Yeah.
church influence?
Mm-mm. From my hatred of public school myself. Remember I was
Uh,
bored because I was smart. And so
yeah.
like I was like, why am I even here? I was always just bored until high school. And then I was able to do the like AP track and then, and feel like I'm achieving and but
But normies,
elementary,
but I've been around all kinds of education. Normies usually get initiated into homeschooling through someone or something. It isn't just rebellion. I mean, even if you
mhm,
decide I want to homeschool, you've still then got to figure out what am I going to do? Like my wife,
mm,
she had her degree at Calvin in elementary ed. And so she had background in it already, and she had been teaching in some schools in the Dominican Republic. So then my son came and he was in first grade at a public school right down the road. And my wife is like,
mhm,
I want to homeschool. And I'm like,
mhm,
because I grew up in Christian Reformed
mhm,
Christian schools,
mhm.
and I was like, I don't know what this homeschool thing is, but hey, honey, if that's what you want to do. By that point, let's see, that would be we didn't have all of our kids yet, but we had three at that point. And so, he was the oldest, he was six. So it was six and 2.5 and a newborn.
Mm.
And she says, I'm going to homeschool her maybe a 1 year. So it's like, honey, but she did it.
Okay.
So
You jumped
what
right
what
in.
initiate what was the process? I mean, was there a homeschool group you got into? I mean, you're in Texas, you're in the Bible Belt. It was a little different here in Sacramento.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I really, again, as an intelligent introvert, hated the social life that was a public school. Like, just felt herded, felt lost in the herd. So I had strong negative, like emotional associations with public school in the lower grades. Um, and then I think, I don't know, in the 2000s, postmodernism, cultural decline. Like, and again, I have a degree in philosophy and literature, like from Wheaton. Like, so my standards are high and I have a fair awareness of worldview issues,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing where culture is going. I have a strong emotional negative response. And I love learning, right? So and then you have the baby, and I don't know, from day one, I'm teaching her how to eat, how
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
talk, and
Yeah.
and so I just keep going,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And so it kind of for me, it was just felt like a natural, logical, 2 plus 2 is 4.
So did you
Um,
make up all your curriculum or did you Singapore math? And I
Yeah,
mean,
so then
because,
I started to look around, right, and what was there and found co-ops and just
okay.
started to find other people and I kind of some people are I tend to kind of find my way into things rather than like do a thorough research.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
You're a jump in instead of
I
a,
am kind of a jump in. I mean, like with I'm an intuitive person, right? So I want, if I feel like I can intuitively see the ground, then I'll jump in.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
And so I can kind of intuitively see based off my own experience and and various understandings that this was the direction to go. And then as I jump in, I start to figure out the lay of the land and curriculum and ended up again with a strong, philosophy, English lit background, very drawn to the classical renewal that was going on, which is going to be literature focused and quickly saw the like negative side of a lot of just busy work or twaddle or worksheets for its own
Yeah.
sake.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so once I jumped into that landscape, quickly found myself within the more classical circles.
Okay.
And that was before Charlotte Mason was as well known.
Okay.
And the whole classical renewal
Yeah.
is a work in process,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then found co-ops and just kind of made educating my girls and then in community and
Yeah.
that becoming the vocation that emerged for me in those
So what
first.
kind of church life have you found in Austin? Because on one hand, you've got a lot of experience with evangelicalism, and your story is very evangelical, but you've also got this artist temperament. You've got a mother, you really had some years of flourishing in the Episcopalians, and now, I mean, to the little I know you, I hear the tension in you
Yeah, thank
between the artist, high church, symbolic, image based, and the, low church, evangelical, um, um, conversion based. So, I
yeah.
hear the antithesis in you and I hear the symbolic in you because, those, I haven't really explored that much in terms of what all has happened in the Peugeot
Mm,
sphere.
mm,
But, there's a lot of that's in the Christian Reformed Church, because of Abram Kuyper, the
mhm,
Christian Reformed Church has sort of both, because Kuyper was both a Renaissance man
mhm,
and he was also leaned pretty hard in a reactive way to modernity into the antithesis, which also took up resonance with some evangelicals and more fundamentalist types. So
mhm,
I'm curious in terms of part of
mhm,
the lovely thing about being homeschool or doing homeschooling is you have a tremendous amount of autonomy because
mhm.
the one thing that those public schools do is they lock you into their regime in terms
Yeah,
of their calendar.
yeah,
And when we were
yeah,
homeschooling our kids, we could take
yeah,
vacations any time of year we wanted to
yeah.
because my schedule is flexible as a pastor. I mean, it gave us a lot of autonomy.
Mhm,
But now with autonomy means also responsibility because, okay, well, and so how, I mean, you don't have
mhm,
to answer in too many specifics if you don't want to, but I
mhm,
can sense in your work this tension between these two sides.
mhm. Yeah. Yes, an integrator is I see myself in many spaces as an integrator. You know, I mean, one just on like the political, I hang out with liberals, I like posture so conservative. Well, if I hang out with too many conservatives, I end up posturing liberal, right? Like that somehow the way that I am made and my story very much sits at an intersection of many different things, right? Which
Yes.
is both wonderful and at times exhausting.
Yes. I can see
Um,
that.
yeah. So in terms of church, well, my husband grew up in Dallas, so Baptist.
I see
And so
Rangers and Cowboys pennants behind you. So,
that's right. Yes, yes. And then he's an Aggie. I don't know if you see the A&M over here.
okay.
So he went to Texas A&M. He's an Aggie, and he had a really good church experience. That A&M has a lot of good Christian people doing a lot of good work there. So he was at, I think, Grace Covenant. It's a and had a really good discipleship experience, right? Which prepared him well. So we get married, and yeah, we don't have strong denominational ties because he's kind of Bible church, and so we go to a Bible church here, Grace Covenant Bible Church, and they had, by God's grace, a really healthy young couples group that was led by a guy who was a counselor and his wife, and they just loved, as a counselor, he loved to minister to newlyweds and people who are getting started. And so we just made friends in that group, and it kind of got us off to a good, healthy start in terms of how do we think about being married. And we're in this group of young married people with a really wise man leading it. I'm just so fortunate because I look around now and I'm like, nobody's doing this.
Mm,
I don't see anybody doing this. So that
mm.
was really fortunate. We made friends who we are still friends with today,
Ah,
which is,
wonderful.
yeah, such a gift. And, for my story, like, this is
Really
something I've
important.
had to intentionally learn
Yeah.
is how to make healthy relationships and emotional attachments and not just withdraw from the loneliness and the chaos, into myself, right? That's
Yeah.
definitely, people are into the Enneagram. That's why I'm an Enneagram 4, who will withdraw into my, like, I'm the only one kind of. That's how I know I'm not doing well, right? Is when
Yeah.
I start to withdraw into
Reminds me of my Elijah
that
sermon
space.
yesterday. I'm the only prophet left. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
Yes. No,
Elijah.
I have an icon of Elijah next to my table because it's Elijah in the wilderness. And he's like, "Well, it's me. And like, there's nobody else in Israel." And then, like, God sends him the blackbirds to feed him and, like, shut up, eat some food and go sleep at the widow's house and you'll be okay. So I have that icon to remind me not to fall into that dynamic too much. But so we're at Grace Covenant, but then we can't afford Austin. So we end up moving north and we end up moving to another Hill Country Bible, really big, kind of more, as much mega church as Austin gets.
Mm,
Um, and that started to kind of sour us on
mm. Industrial
evangelicalism.
Christianity.
Yeah, it was kind of industrial Christianity, right? And the last time we were there, he was teaching Nehemiah in order to do a building campaign. Yeah. It was like, if you're not with me, you're against me, and I'm Nehemiah, and we need a really big building. And so we're like, eh. It's not that building things is bad. It was just that something was off in the spirit, right? And we also were trying to move closer to town because my husband was commuting sometimes 2 hours a day
Oh,
when traffic was bad. So we ended up moving to South Austin. And in that time, again, this is our evangelical recovery part of our story. And it's more connected to my husband's journey because he was more deeply in that
mm.
evangelical Bible church culture, more deeply in it. And so he's going to be an engineer, but hey, working for the machine, working in an office, it's not thrilling. It's not really meaningful. It's not super life-giving.
You
It's
got bills to pay, and it
You got
pays the
bills to pay.
bills.
But what is his real vocation or his real calling, right? And so
Uh,
if you're really a Christian, you're going to go into some kind of ministry, right?
right.
And so he's taking classes at Dallas Theological Seminary at the
Uh-huh.
same time that he's working, and we have our babies. And sometimes I'd go with him pregnant and argue with the professors. He'd be like, "Oh, next time you can stay home." Um, just kidding. He likes it. He likes me. So
Spoken like a true married person.
yes, right. Oh, we have
It's
fun.
true. It's true. I've been married 37 years. I understand. Keep
Yeah.
going.
Married life is fun when you get over your ego, right? When you just, if you can get to the point of, like, we both know how to repent, we're not here protecting our egos, we can just have a lot of fun together,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
laugh and tease and yeah, it's good. So he goes into seminary thinking he's got this engineer mind. He's going to go into seminary and study systematic theology and come up with the right systematic theology, finally, once and for all. I mean,
150 years too late, but go on. That was tried in the 19th century really hard.
oh, I know, bless him, right? But that's just what he
He's an
knew,
engineer. Yeah.
right? And that's just what he knew.
Yeah.
And so here he is in Dallas Theological, but he's realizing that the professors he really likes are actually dispensational. And the class that he really likes, the history of the church is, it's a big, the reality is a bit different than he was thinking, right?
Yeah.
So he ends up quitting halfway through his THM because he's like, I don't even know what my theology is anymore.
Oh.
which is great. Like that was the Lord's severe mercy to him, right? That, you're young. It's just, there's no shame in this. It's what it is to be young and
Yeah,
optimistic and to think you're going to go
absolutely.
out into the world and, figure things out. And then you realize it's a lot more complicated than you think. And that the things you think are really important aren't quite as important.
That's right.
And
And that's
so,
wisdom. That is wisdom.
yeah.
Yep.
And so we need to move closer to town. He's going through his theological crisis. And I'm like, well, what I really liked was the Episcopal Church where it was so beautiful. And so he's like, yeah, I can't do that Catholic stuff yet. But we end up at a fairly quasi-liturgical Presbyterian church.
Oh, good. Good. That'll
Yeah.
work.
So we're there for 3 years. That's where all three of our girls were baptized. Because then we
Ah,
got into infant baptism, right?
right, right.
So they all got baptized together. And this was a little church meeting at a school. But as we get more and more into Presbyterianism and kind of learning that liturgical stream, realizing we're just not that Calvinist. We're not real Calvinists,
Not
and
everybody can be.
yeah. It is shocking to me that, like, are you Calvinist technically? You just
A
don't
lot of
seem
people don't think
Calvinist.
so.
I know, but I mean, if you're Dutch Reformed, then you are,
I am.
right? But it usually carries a certain culture with it that you go,
Especially in Texas.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
so much in not so much in the Dutch CRC. It's a
right.
Calvinism. Calvin is upstream of just about all, almost all Protestantism in America. It just
Yeah.
is, one
Especially
way or another.
intelligent Protestantism,
Yeah, yeah,
especially Protestant that wants to think deeply and
yeah,
right.
yeah.
I like Calvin and his institutes. I'm just not 100% there, right? My tulip's a little wilty, right? So, um,
Her tulip doesn't have five petals anymore.
no, it's not so robust. So, and the particular Presbyterian culture here was just a little head on a
Yeah,
stick,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yes. And that's part of the difference between the Dutch and the English.
Mm,
So the Dutch always had, I mean, shoot, you've got the English, you've got the North Sea, you've got the French, you've got the Germans. The Dutch have learned to be flexible over the centuries. And one of the things that the Dutch have in their DNA, which is really in the Christian Reformed Church, is they there can be a certain amount of flexibility in the
mm.
CRC. Now the CRC is really going through some interesting times now,
Aren't we all?
um, but that Dutchness,
Mm,
sort of like, for example, I knew a missionary. There was a missionary in I knew actually his son. There's a missionary who was in with the PC, one of the Presbyterian churches. He was in Japan, and just in his prayer life, he discovered himself, he was speaking in tongues. He didn't know what to do because he knew that in a bunch of the Presbyterian churches that wasn't going to work. So he went to the CRC because it was just a little bit more pragmatic and flexible. And you can
mm,
see that quality if you compare, let's say, the Westminster
mm,
Catechism with the
mm,
Heidelberg Catechism. There's a lot of similarities in
mm,
there, but the Heidelberg is just a little warmer, a little
mm,
bit more flexible. And the Heidelberg was made at this place and time in Germany where someone was trying to make some peace, especially
mm,
between the Lutherans and the Calvinists, but also got a lot of
mm,
Catholics around too. So
mm.
how about we not be fighting? So
Right,
yeah,
right.
I've got more of that Dutch Calvinism in me rather than sort of the John Knox.
Yeah, yeah. Because the Netherlands really were a more diverse, center of trade as it's developing. And so they were contending with a more diverse context in which
Yeah.
the rest of Europe was at.
They didn't
Right.
have the benefit of a moat around them
Yeah.
that they could keep everybody out.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, and our experience, like I said, here was just a little head on a stick, very,
Yeah.
very intellectual, but not as much emotional, relational
Yep.
health.
Yep.
And the associate pastor ended up becoming Anglican while we were there. And so, when we were good friends with him and kind of through that, he's like, y'all are Anglican, just go to that church over there. And so we did. So
Yeah.
we were at Christ Church for almost 15 years.
Oh, wonderful.
And there was a lot of goodness and health
Yeah.
there for a long time.
Yeah.
But, as the cultural pressures in Austin just crank,
Mm.
crank. crank, crank, crank. Really feel like there was a lot of squishiness there. And where
Mm,
we ended up being, I did a fair amount of ministry there and teaching there.
yeah.
That's as I went back to school, got my degree in cultural apologetics and did various work, and just felt like I was pulling, like I'm leaning this way and they're leaning this way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the tension became too much
Yeah.
to where I'm just frustrated all the time. And
Yeah.
that's not good for my soul.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So we're now trying to plant an Anglican church in Southwest Austin. And part of that, I think, is because it became a destination church in downtown Austin that got more and more
Mm,
self-conscious about being cool. I mean, Austin
yeah.
is just a very self-consciously cool. And that's not a robust spiritual value, actually.
You're right. It is not.
Right. And I think some of my experience, right, is I know the stakes that
Yeah.
we're playing with. I've
Yeah.
experienced the stakes we're playing with.
Yeah.
A family that falls apart, a life that
Yeah.
falls apart. And so I'm always very conscious of like, and then being philosophically minded of like, I see where this leads. I
Yeah.
see where this
Yeah.
leads. We need
Yeah.
to regroup
Yeah.
here and stay strong and stay strong. And I just felt like I was fighting the drift.
Yeah.
So we've stayed Anglican, but in that moment, that's when everyone's thinking about, well, what is the right church, the true church that can hold its ground strong against the storm, right? As the cultural storm, we really are
Yeah.
going through this transitional period, right? We're feeling it this week right now with the new Groiper attack. It's just crazy out there.
Yeah.
It's the old world is dying, the new
Yep.
world's being built. It's
Yep.
very messy.
Yep.
And a lot of us have tenuous roots, right?
Mm,
And so how do we root in deep? It's the trees with strong, deep roots that are
yeah.
able to buffer the storm and not fall
Yeah.
over. And so
Yeah.
where's the church? Where's the community with the strong, deep roots? And that's where I think Catholicism and Orthodox have very strong pull because they are stinking, they're old, they're
Yeah.
very old. They've weathered several seasons of turnover,
Yep.
several
Yep.
eras, right? The rise and fall of many worlds that they have endured. And so there's a real temptation to look to move that direction. But I mean, I just felt like I was circling.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I'm glad you've seen What About Bob? Uh, when What About
Many
Bob's trying to get
times
on,
my kids loved it.
right? When he's trying to get on the elevator, right? And he just like keeps circling, he like tries to get on, he's like, he like, circles again. Like this is me, like thinking about the elevator of Catholicism or Orthodoxy and like just can't quite do it, right? And just keep never
Yeah.
having peace. And finally, the Lord has brought me to a place of like, lean not on in your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge me, and I will direct your paths. I will tell you when you need to go, if you need to go.
Yep. Yep.
Right now, I have you here.
Yep.
And in Anglicanism, there really is, it is an integrate. I know I sit at an intersection in terms of my personality and my gifting and my story. And Anglicanism also sits in many ways at an intersection of evangelical, reformed, but also liturgical and symbolic, and that God has me here for a reason, and it suits well the work that I've been given to do.
Yep.
And then to what you're saying about the Dutch heritage, I think there's something too. Okay, we're trying to find roots. Well, I'm very Anglo-Saxon. Now, for a little while, I thought I was Welsh. Do you know this story? I was like, I think my family crest is Welsh. And so I'm going over to England and I'm going to look it up. And I'm like, oh, it's not Welsh, it's Anglo-Saxon. Richard Willen's like, well, I could have told you that after looking at you for 5 seconds. Your face is obviously Anglo-Saxon. So Anglo-Saxon about my face. Anyway, so apparently I'm Anglo-Saxon, both in looks and deed. There's roots there.
Yep.
I'm Anglican.
Yep.
There's a heritage there.
Yep.
I love English literature.
Yeah.
I teach English literature.
Yeah.
And so kind of just rooting where I'm, this is where I am. I'm going to be where I'm planted. if the Lord wants me to journey on, I'm very open to him telling me, what to do next. So that's kind of how I'm just still sitting here in Anglicanism. And I do think in that way, I hope someone who can help create fruitful conversations between many, many Catholic friends that I love and do a lot of work with, and many Orthodox friends that I love and do a lot of work with, and many evangelical friends that I love and do a lot of work with. And, we just have bigger fish to fry in
Yeah.
our interdenominational debate. So the one thing that I will stand strong on is the sacramental worldview. I really think that is essential to a healthy Christianity. And so where I find I'm not able to work well with people is when they want to cling to a kind of dualism. And usually I find that it's fear of what the implications are for women. Well, if my body has symbolic meaning that in any kind of way exercises authority over me, I don't like that.
Hmm.
That's usually when I'm like digging into like, what's wrong with the sacramental worldview? Well, it will lead to some kind of misogyny.
Hmm. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I could see that. Well, our culture, I'm reading a book by Christopher Clark, really enjoying it, on the revolutions of 1848. And I'm in the second chapter now, these huge chapters. But it's fascinating in the run up to all of these and in these revolutions that sort of sweep Europe in 1848 and 1849. It really transforms the continent in a lot of ways. Um, Many of the ideas that we're dealing with today, they're just sort of emerging there.
Mhm.
And he's reading some people from that period. It's like, wow, could have heard this in the 60s and 70s, could have this heard this at the height of wokeism. It's just all these ideas just reemerging, and a lot of them have to do, I think this is part of the reason Mary Harrington is so helpful. A lot of
Mhm.
them have to do with the way that industrialization really sort of rips apart the pastoral world, in which sexual complementarity in some ways sort of fell on much more natural, inevitable lines, and we're in this strange world now where we don't quite the mappings, the masculine
Yeah.
and feminine mappings aren't nearly so obvious, and therefore, there's just a lot more chaos going on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think that's right. Nancy Piercy, I got to study with her at HCU, and she talks about this a lot. That was really helpful for me to
yeah,
realize the way that, yeah, industrialization shifted the way that we lived together.
yeah,
And really just meant that women were abandoned in a home where nothing was happening,
yeah.
which isn't the way the world worked
No,
at all
no,
before industrialization. So what rather than deny that men and women are different, we just have to renegotiate how to recover our a kind of wholesome, I'll use the word wholesome, complementarity in a new
yeah,
context.
yeah, yeah,
And I do think that's where, for me, the internet has helped because it's brought activity back into the home. So the first
yeah,
step for me was
yeah,
homeschooling. Well, this is this is a job that uses my creativity and my intelligence. And for a while I ran a blog called Chief Executive Mom. So I was going to take that like type A part of me that was,
yeah,
um that love to get good grades and prove myself that way, but try to redeem it and sanctify it and direct it in a new way. And so, I thought, chief executive mom. Okay, well, if I was out there, as I thought I would be as a career woman, making her own way, climbing to the top of whatever ladder, all the excellence and energy that I would have given that job, why don't I give this job?
yeah.
Like this job seems
That's what
important,
poured into those
right?
little girls.
Yeah, but and building a family
Yeah,
culture, right?
yeah,
And so building a family culture, building a community, a neighborly community, raising my girls. And so for a while, that blog, gave me a way to process that and think about that and formulate how I was going to approach that
yeah,
for a little while. And so the internet has this is a topic that comes up in this little corner, right? Is that we all see the bad side of social media and the bad side of the internet and the way that it really can cause problems. But we have to hold that intention with the good that it's done.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's enabled me to be really happy in a home-based life
Yeah.
because I'm not so isolated and my active, lively mind has some way of engaging the world,
Mhm.
right? And that's enabled us to renegotiate, I feel like in our family is healthy gender roles and balance. And so I'm thankful for that, you know.
Yeah.
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 And then, well, the whole ministry you have is
Yeah.
possible because of that. And so it's really
Yeah.
about recognizing the strengths and the weaknesses and being people with enough virtues to navigate those well rather than just throwing it all away.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have a much clearer picture of you now, and I intentionally want to give you time for questions that you might have, but I really appreciate you telling your story. And so, again, for those who aren't as familiar with my channel, right now, actually, I'm always playing with things. So I'm playing around with a 24/7 live stream of just like all old randos conversations. And right now, there are 8 people watching that, or including this monitor that's on it. I'm not really watching. I don't know how many of those other people just have it running on something either. But part of the reason that I've done this is, I grew into this thing accidentally. And what I knew how to do in terms of dealing with the, river of people who began to come to me once I started making videos about Jordan Peterson's biblical series was basically what I do as a pastor, which is, well, who are you? How can I figure out who you are? And so then I
Mhm.
have hundreds of videos of people who found me, who had also, in many cases, found Jordan Peterson or some other thing that I had been touching on at some point, and and I get them just like we've sort of done with you today to tell their story. And what has happened in there is that what people will find is that while your story is unique, there's all these little elements of your story that they can sort of,
Mhm.
connect to and say, oh, yeah. And she did it this way, or she learned this, and that led here. And but for me, this was there here. And so, and in many ways, that's, as you're thinking about church planting, I was quite
Mhm.
involved with church planting for my first 15 years here in Sacramento. Um, one of the things one of the real challenges with a church plant, especially if you have like if the things that church plants really want, which is something attractional, which will sort of
Mhm.
attract a critical mass, because you kind of do need a critical mass for a whole variety of reasons. But that attractional, once you've got to knit that to actually have it become a church and not just an audience, you need a
Mhm.
way for the people to begin to knit together with their lives.
Mhm.
So, and that then becomes a real church because it's a community.
Mhm.
So, and then of course, Estuary came from this because I had so many people coming at
Mhm.
me, and what I knew how to do was I just started have to knit furiously and had to watch how let's say the secondary leaders would emerge
Mhm.
and then create in some senses, the small groups. But you have to do that with this very idiosyncratic, interesting gathering of people from the internet, some of whom are Christian. And in terms
Mhm.
of those who identify as Christian, they're all over the ecclesiastical map: Orthodox, Catholic, Protestants of all stripes, Mormons. I mean, we just got all because the internet is bringing all these people in, and the TLC is not confessional as such.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Mhm.
and that's
Mhm.
how, and so that's, but in people hearing your story, I mean, the case is that only probably a few hundred or maybe a couple thousand will actually listen to this story because most people are going to YouTube to get their little dopamine hit.
Mhm.
And to actually listen to a story like this, it requires something of the listener, and then that investment then produces fruit too. So anyway, so
Mhm.
all that to say, Thank you for your story. And in my experience, which was a complete surprise with this, I think what you'll find when the story finally sort of gets to the full open channel, you'll be, I think you'll find the experience a good one. Almost everybody does because most of my listeners, especially in the comments, they can be generous and they can be encouraging. And especially in the early days when we had a lot of people who were really struggling with things, the community that sort of built up, even in the comment section on YouTube, which I think couldn't happen,
Mhm.
they found support, and that's it's out of there that a bunch
Mm.
of the relationships began to grow, and that sort of created the TLC and this estuary network. So,
I doing a lot of small group work. We led a small group
yep,
10 years, over 10 years,
yep,
and we always tell stories,
yep,
tell our stories as the way to
yep,
begin knitting a group together, right? Because
yep.
it is it is understanding someone in context, right? That all of a sudden, you know, maybe there's certain things about me or the way that I interact on X which are a little irritating to someone, right? But when they hear that it comes from this space or this dynamic, right, it begins to make sense, right?
Right.
And Lewis has this famous quote at the end of Experiment in Criticism where he's talking about literary people who read all these stories and they need them because there's something in the human soul that it's not enough just to see through my eyes. I need to see through, I am part of a body, right? And I just as this finger is only properly itself when it is integrated participatorily with the rest of the body. Like I need to see through the eyes of others. Literature is one way to do that with people who lived long ago or far away, right? And sharing our own stories, our own living literature
Yep.
is another way to see the world with that myriad of eyes and that richness, which, you know, is how we act. As I said, like it was hard for me to learn to bond with people because of the emotional isolation I lived in, right?
Yeah.
That is the way into the hearts of one another, right?
Yeah.
To sit down and to hear those stories. And I think, one thing I'm thinking about with is again, I feel like I kind of bounce on the edge of this little corner because I'm not, I'm not sure how to have the time. And one thing I've found at dinner, as we think about, okay, this is good, we don't want to just throw it away, but it is tricky to properly integrate, right? Because we'll sit down at dinner. Well, on a day when my head's been online, maybe I listened to one of your videos and I was on Twitter and maybe I was doing work for teaching the Odyssey, and then I come with all this to talk about, and the rest of my family's like, what are you doing? You
I've
know,
been banned from certain dinner tables.
yeah. And so how there's, one way I think about what this space is doing is people who are maybe in seasons like mine where they're lost and they don't know how to, but the internet draws you in and then you encounter people and stories and it can then bounce back out to your real life of like, okay, in this space, I kind of pulled myself together or the Lord in his graciousness help me piece together a sense of myself and a sense of what's going on. And I began to make friends and experience being knowing and being known, but I can't live 100%
Yes.
in the digital space. I got to
Yes.
find a way to bounce this back into incarnational space, right? And
Yes.
I feel like that's kind of what we're all trying to figure out and negotiate, right?
Yes.
And I don't, you know, I just try to look for the best strategy I have right now is I just try to look for overlap wherever I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So our Bible study, sometimes I'll share a video and then encourage other people like, was there a podcast you were listening to? Like
Yeah.
share it with our group and we'll take 5 minutes to talk about it. Like where can I just make any kind of point of overlap as one step of
Yep.
trying to integrate these spaces? And I don't know if you have other bits of encouragement or thoughts on how you're trying to help pastor people in
Yeah.
that way.
Well, one of the all along, I've always told people that I am not actually your pastor. I can't be your pastor. This is not a pastoral relationship fundamentally. It doesn't mean that good things can't happen. this morning, Luke Thompson had a live stream, and it's a common thing that comes up where people are like, well, what are we doing? I said, well, most of the doing doesn't happen on screens, okay? So if you're looking on screens to see evidence of the doing, you're probably going to have to understand sort of second order things. And this has been an issue for me right from the start because I pastor a small, struggling church,
Mm-hmm.
and very quickly what happened on the internet was very disconnected with what was happening in the church because nobody in the church
Mm-hmm.
watches YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
at least especially when we started, because why would they? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
So then, and it's part of the reason that estuary has developed the way it has.
Mm-hmm.
Because now in our local estuary, which meets every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, and if you're looking for something to play around with in your church plant, just as a tool for small groups, the estuary protocol works really
Mm-hmm.
well.
It was fun
Um,
to experience that because I totally, yes,
yeah,
I've been in enough small group things. I'm like, y'all have hit upon something. Yeah, that really is workable. That was really fun to be part of.
yeah. So our little 9 o'clock estuary here, it's
Mm-hmm.
about half people from the church and about half people either not from this church or don't go to church. And I always wanted, because my ministry has always sort of been half in and half out. Because when I got here, a good chunk of the membership didn't live in the local neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
But because I've had so much inner city pastoral ministry and ministry with the poor, just winding up working with homeless,
Mm-hmm.
mental illnesses, poverty, neighborhood. I've always had to negotiate sort of different
Mm-hmm.
spaces within church. And so
Mm-hmm.
then when the internet thing happened, I needed to, I was using the church for Jordan Peterson meetups,
Mm-hmm.
but there are two groups. And for a while, I was a little concerned. What if the Jordan Peterson meetup group gets bigger than the church? What if that happens? But the Jordan Peterson meetup thing was sort of a wave. And, then we,
Mm-hmm.
got going with Estuary. So the, my thinking of this is that sort of like okay, let me step back. In evangelical churches, as sort of in your husband's story, a lot of people think that the climax of a Christian's life is full-time professional ministry,
Mm-hmm.
and that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So here's where my Calvinism comes in, and it's Protestantism. We have the priesthood of all believers. Everyone has a calling. Now, when I tell people in the church that my calling is no higher than the calling of the hydrologist or the mom or the retiree, nobody believes me. I learned that very quickly in ministry. Everybody, no, you have a special higher calling. It's like, that's not actually what our theological tradition says. And the goal of ministry is actually your maturing in your calling, in your vocation, in the story and the role that God is leading you into his kingdom. And that doesn't mean you need to go to Bible school or seminary necessarily. There's only a group of us who need to do that, and we have our part in the body to bring the body to maturity. But the maturity includes artists and electricians and accountants and garbage truck workers and all of the things that it
Mm-hmm.
takes for a flourishing world. So some of that is very true of the TLC. And many of the people, like now looking at all these hundreds of conversations I've had with people over the last 8 years, many of these people are don't participate anymore. Part of that is just YouTube churn, but
Mm-hmm.
part of it is like the prototypical rando who was Job from the Netherlands, who now is an elder in his church. He's a father of two. He just doesn't have time for the
Mm-hmm.
TLC or this anymore
Mm-hmm.
because he's living the product of what we wanted to help enable in them. It's
Right.
like the goal of learning relationships is not to become a psychologist and a relational coach.
Yes.
The goal
Mm-hmm.
of learning relationships is to be in a healthy, fruitful relationship. That's the goal. And what I think we've tended to do In
Mhm.
internet land is imagine that the goal of a Christian is to be a minister or a priest, or the goal of a relationship,
Mhm.
someone learning relationships is to be a relationship coach. It's like,
Yeah.
no, the
Yeah.
goal is to be a human being and the one that God has called you in particular to be in all of that complexities
Mhm.
through a lifelong arc.
Yeah.
And
That's really, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
It's really parallel to what Jonathan Pageau is saying about art in a sense,
Yes.
right? And I'm going to tie this to, I just reread Kingsnorth's Against the Machine, and he talks about the way that what the machine does is he has this image of the, like, I imagine like a big harvester. And y'all, you see the movie Cars and the huge like
Yeah.
harvester out there
Yeah.
that's like scares everyone at night. So this huge harvester that comes and everything, it just pulls up everything and commodifies it, right? And turns it into something for efficiency and profit.
Yeah.
Just devours everything and tr spits it out as profit. And that's the mentality though that we've absorbed there, where whatever it is that we love, or maybe as a gifting or as a good, we have to make into a career, right?
Right.
And that's actually just the machine talking on a personal level of where, and I coach kids in high school all the time about that. Oh, do you love music? Don't be a musician. Like, do not, oh, you like to draw? Do not go to art school. Just draw because you like it, because you're a human.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where Pageau's saying, he's fighting against art for art's sake. That to do art is to elevate art to this, like, oh, you got to be an artist and be in these museums versus art. What if it just serves life? That we, in our context, make things that we use that are beautiful because we're humans who need beauty, and putting it back in its proper context, I think is what you're saying. Do you think there's a parallel there?
I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And and it's part of what so I will pastor this church as long as I can. I'm nearing retirement. What happens after retirement? I don't know. But I've
Your
always
commune, your family commune.
the compound,
Com
not
Compound, sorry,
commune.
that's right.
If you say commune, I won't get anybody there. Because
Farm,
my kids
the
are
family
already a little
homestead.
worried about me because this whole online thing, it's a little culty, Dad, because people
Yeah.
show up and so not commune. Um,
Sorry. Homestead family.
homestead, there's a good word. No, so it's even how we do it. The goal isn't to become a YouTuber. Now we use YouTube, but we use it in ways like I'm always dealing with this tension of, on one hand, a little bit bigger, a little more reach, a little more money, that would have that gives affordances,
Hmm.
but it does lead you then into that machine world.
Yeah. And it's harder to
And
scale the heart of what you're doing as you move
right.
up in
Well, and scale is the problem. What
Yeah.
it should be is more growth. And growth involves, I mean, kids, once you have kids, you learn they don't always grow at the same speed. They're
Hmm.
growing, when they're real little, they grow like crazy, really fast. And then they sort of slow down. But
Hmm.
other things are growing in them.
Hmm.
And then they grow some more. And then they slow down. And other things are being wired in them. And so
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
goal is not to do this. And I was just listening to a conversation I had with Sam Tiedemann in the early years because when I started this, everybody wanted to hockey stick this thing and to make a corporation and to make a thing. And I said, no, we're not going to do that. And people were really frustrated with me. And it's like, you could be frustrated and leave. You can leave. Anybody, this is not a cult. Anybody can leave anytime they want to. Find what is helpful and be helped. And if you never
Hmm.
come back again, God bless you. Because
Hmm.
part of, again, if you want to know about Calvinism, part of it is I am not in charge. God is in charge. And I can save no one. You know, it's God who brings salvation. And so
Hmm.
whatever part I can play
Hmm.
in whatever super complicated story God has you in, I'm going to try and play that and just point you to him and facilitate whatever it is that he's doing in you. And that's fundamentally the pastoral role.
Hmm.
And so I'm not a theologian. I'm not an academic. I'm fundamentally a pastor. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to help people knit things together.
Yeah.
And yeah,
But in an era where you have enough intellectual skill and curiosity and worldview chops from your reform background to meet the pastoral need of a particular moment.
yeah, I am what God has made me to be
Mhm.
intergenerationally. And the older I get, the more I can appreciate things I couldn't appreciate when I was young. The more I've learned from my father that he didn't sort of intentionally sit me down and didactically instruct me in. I just saw him doing it and wound up doing it too. So there's many, many things like that. And so it's easy to get, and I have the same thing with my struggling little church. It's like, well, will the church be open 2 years from now? I don't know. Um, but
Yeah.
I, we live at the pleasure of the King,
Yeah.
and so if trusting Jesus is Christianity 101, and it never goes away. And so, one of the early questions was, well, what is a Christian? And my definition of a Christian is someone who trusts Jesus more than they trust themselves. That's my
Yeah.
definition of a Christian.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then people have to think about that. But it's like, if you don't have that,
Mhm.
you don't have anything. You're just playing with ideas, which are fun. But anyway,
Mhm.
so I'm
Right.
talking too much. Anything else? Anything you wanted to? I mean, you got your chance now. So
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. But to your last point, um, what a Christian is. I mean, that's why, even though it was, I'll sometimes look back on my story. We'll kind of wrap this up to my story
it's a great story. It's a great story.
and like feel compassion for my old self. Like that was rough.
Yeah. Well,
That was
you
rough. But
you
to
couldn't be
learn
you
that,
now
that's right.
without all of that stuff.
But to learn that lesson of like, but by the grace of God go I,
Yeah,
and that God really holds you,
yeah,
right? And that is precious. It's worth having the world fall apart if you can discover, right, Christ in that space. Like he really is the one who holds us together. Um, and so I'm thankful, to be able to say I'm thankful for the hard things because they have led me to the rock that does not fail, right? And as Lewis says, the sun now by which I see all things
yeah,
and I can see how all things hold together.
yeah.
It's been I'm thankful. Yeah. And you think about with your own kids, the next generation, right? It's hard to think about what will they need to go through in order for this faith and inheritance I have sought to offer them to become their own,
Yeah.
in that existential way. Yeah, I love Kierkegaard, right? That each person has to have this kind of existential experience where
Yeah.
the ideas, they're great as they are, but if they aren't real in some way, um, they have to become real. The hard thing as a parent is watching your kids as the velveteen rabbit, right? Suffering in order to
Yeah.
become, right,
Yeah.
a real rabbit. So that's the phase I'm in now, is trying to stay humble so that the Lord, you have to keep growing. If you don't keep growing, you die.
Yeah.
Right. And so, okay, I feel like I have my life figured out. My marriage is pretty good. I got like figured out. But if I don't stay humble, if I don't stay in a learning posture, then I will become an obstacle to my children because the story keeps going on. And
Yeah.
if I want to participate in that story with them, right, I need to be open to the fact that there's still things I don't know and there's still things I don't quite understand, and that I'm kind of passing on the story. And there's just this huge uh, this is the next emotional challenge. Okay, I've learned to love and to have emotional connection to people, and now I've made myself vulnerable to what they're going to do with that, with the next stage in the story, right? So that's kind of where I'm at now, and thinking about moving forward is um, how to stay open and vulnerable as my kids pick up the next season of this family story.
And so now I said before, my youngest is 25 and my oldest is 34, and I've watched all the it's not an easy time for 20 somethings. I
Mm-mm.
think it was that when my wife and I um in the 80s, I think it was an easier time for 20 somethings in the 80s. And one of the really difficult things as a parent and as a Christian parent is and as a pastor, I said this at the Southeast that we just had in October. As a pastor, the really when I meet a really amazing Christian, a saint, when I meet somebody that it's like, wow, Christ has really been formed in this person. In every case that I've met, there has been a deep wound somewhere
Mhm.
that they have had to live with. And of course, this is very biblical. It's what Paul talks about, and
Mhm.
on and on and on. Um, but then you have these children, and the thing you want most for your children is that they be safe and
Mhm.
happy and all of those things. And as a parent, you raise these children, and what you don't do as a parent to try to shelter and buffer and protect. If you're a good parent, you do that. And even though you do it in ways that are a good parent will let the kids when they're little have these you let them fall down, you let them take risks, you let things, but always in a measured way. And
Yep.
then when they get out in the world, I think about, your story, and it's like, yeah, my 20 something daughter is going to drive 4 days up to Alaska all by herself and go backpacking all by herself. I can already hear in the back of my mind what my wife is thinking about what's going to happen to this.
Mhm.
And it's just that with all of these kids, you have to, I think about what Jordan Peterson said about this Pieta, this statue in the Vatican of Mary holding the crucified Jesus, and Peterson saying, in some ways it's what we all do with our children in the world. I
Mhm.
remember one therapist I was talking to, and she was saying to me, she was just about at retirement, so she had done a whole career as a therapist, and she said, there's all this material and all this study on raising kids at just about every level, but there's like nothing about being the parent of adult children. And it is it's almost you have to graduate from all of doing it. And then suddenly, well, now you have no control, you have little influence, um, and be careful of the control you actually have because that can get squirrely very quickly, and also get squirrely in your marriage. Um, so now having seen all of my kids get through those early 20s, figuring out, okay, you graduated college with that degree. Now what? What do you do with those
Mhm.
romantic relationships? What do you do in a world that is sort of pushing you in this direction? What do you do in an economy?
Mhm.
And what do you do because in many ways, the 20s they're still in some ways responding to mom and dad and the household they grew up in. Then
Mhm.
they get into the 30s, and then sometimes the deeper work begins
Mhm.
where, okay, well, this is what mom and dad didn't even see in their own relationship that somehow got into me, and I'm playing this out in the
Mhm.
relationships in
Mhm.
my life. And then when you're a parent watching these things happen and you watch your kids do things, it's like, oh, they got that one from me. It's better than they got that one from you. But it's a
Yes.
it's a it's a real thing.
Yeah. My own relationship with my mom didn't really survive that process
Yeah.
because I she has it she'll she wants things to be needy so that she can rescue them,
Mm,
right? And be
yeah.
the and that was part of why I think growing up we didn't have much. I was going to be independent, and my sister was the one who was more open and needy, and so she was always rescuing my sister, and
Yeah.
that's how she felt like a good person, because this is that toxic liberalism that people will talk about, right?
Yeah.
um the toxic empathy, the I can seem like a really wonderful, loving, gracious person by always graciously rescuing the person in need, and that dynamic becomes an identity.
Yes.
Um, and so I kind of I exuded independence, so I got ignored. My sister exuded uh, um, a softerness, and so she got rescued all the time.
Yeah.
And so then as you become an adult, um, she came into my kids to look for the next needy thing that she could rescue. And I was quite, so my own sister's story didn't turn out so well. So if you're always rescued from everything, turns out you don't grow up very healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she's had a long journey. Praise the
Yeah.
Lord. She's doing pretty well right now, but a really traumatic, as I told you, the only two things I emotionally bonded with as a kid were horses and my sister.
Yeah.
And my mom's toxic empathy nearly destroyed my sister, so that there were years, I didn't know if she was dead or alive.
Yeah.
And so that's, again, like people who like maybe see me on X, my concern about toxic empathy is because it destroyed the one thing I had known how to love, right?
Mm,
Almost destroyed. Again, she's
yeah.
doing pretty well, and it's really like one of my life's joys to see my sister have survived all of that, come to a place of stability, come to faith in Christ. And she's actually the um main family member. Like, well, I get along with, yeah. Anyway, to enjoy relationship with her again is really this
Mm,
wonderful thing.
mm,
So as we're talking about, the parenting older children, and that in the 20s and 30s, another layer is going to come out,
yeah.
particularly around kids, right? And so when my mom wanted to play the toxic empathy game with my kids, I felt a very firm, clear conviction. No, we're not playing that game um, with the kids. But someone who doesn't want to mature can't have intimacy with you if you do want to mature, right? So that
Yeah.
my desire to grow into healthy relationships and healthy boundaries and was a threat to, right, the family system that was so
Yeah.
important to my mom's identity.
Yeah.
And so our own relationship didn't survive that process,
Mm,
to for various reasons. And so now that I think about, and I'll have that voice of like, well, you know you haven't stayed close to your mother, so just wait until it's your turn and your children
mm,
break away from you, right?
yeah.
That revenge voice that comes,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Which is part of how emotional manipulation works.
Yep. Yep.
So as I enter into this, I'm trying. The thing is, if you act out of fear, oh, I don't want to repeat the past, and if I'm really driven by fear and anxiety, I will inevitably repeat the past,
Yeah. That's
right?
right. That's right. That's
And this
right.
is actually one of our friends, like someone wanted us to talk about dressage, right? This is the thing that horses teach me right now, because they mirror your emotions. So when I go out and I get on that horse, and right now I'm riding a kind of sensitive horse, and he'll like look and he'll like, is that okay? And if I respond with, I don't know, is it okay? We fall into a fear cycle and everything goes wrong,
Oh, wow.
right? So I'm
Huh.
I'm doing a sport that moment by moment demands that I somehow find in myself the courage not to live in fear, but to live in a bold confidence in order to make this ride work, is like practicing at the level of sport, the thing that I feel like we as parents have to practice to build healthy extended family cultures. I can't react in fear, or I will start to create the very thing that I don't want to happen. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
That makes perfect sense. It sounds like the providence of God to, because it's not a common hobby.
Mm-mm.
And although I have a cousin who is married to a farrier, that's someone who does horseshoeing.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
dangerous job, man.
yeah, it's interesting, but
There's not
but
many of those.
no, well, she's in the Northeast, and they're probably moving to Maine, but no, it's no, what you say is true. And these family systems, they are, often when I do these Randos conversations, we'll get multi-generational because then it goes. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing
Mm-hmm.
about the Calvinism too, the hard the hard reality of this world is that not every story ends happily.
Mm-hmm.
And another hard reality of this world is that I say it this way, we can't do the math on stories. What do I mean by that? In 2018, so
Mm-hmm.
I have an older sister, I'm the middle child, and a younger sister, and we grew up, I think, in a great home. Um, my father was an inner city pastor. My parents loved each other. They did great ministry. They were secure, wonderful people. My father dies in 2013, sitting across the table from someone, just doing ministry like he always did. And that, hey, Dad, he was 77. It's a little young than we expected. It was completely out of the blue. But, you can have a service where, his kids are grown, his wife is well situated in their retirement home, has a wonderful church. You just praise God. You do the kind of funeral
Mm-hmm.
you want to do. Then
Mm-hmm.
2018, my younger sister dies of a heart attack, watching TV with her husband, watching the evening news in their living room,
Mm-hmm.
and leaves, three kids
Mm-hmm.
who are just in those college years, and two of them with their own challenges, and um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just and those kids have struggled because they lost her mom, and she had a really unique and gifted way of helping those kids get through college. And so one of them, had to quit college. He couldn't, and two of them now live with my brother-in-law at home. Or actually, three of them right now. One moved back because she's now teaching in the same school that my sister taught, and she taught English Lit at Lexington Christian Academy. And and then it's interesting because I look and my younger sister was always the one that was so much more like my mother. And my older sister was more, she's the artist, she's the creative,
Mm-hmm.
um, she's the wild one. I'm in the middle. And then my younger sister was the dutiful,
Mm-hmm.
stable, always the routine. And so for my mother, the assumption was that after dad died, Lori would be the one, the youngest sister, to just carry on. And then she
Mm-hmm.
gets taken at
Mm-hmm.
such a tremendous cost to her children, at such a critical time. And the cost continues to be felt.
Mm-hmm.
But then I see what I've seen since my younger sister died is, well, now my older sister, who, it was my mother and my older sister would always be the ones that sometimes
Mm-hmm.
would, and their relationship has gone to new, beautiful
Mm-hmm.
places that I don't know if it would have gone to if my younger sister had been alive. And I can't do the math on anything. That doesn't justify anything. It doesn't mean that there isn't loss or hurt or anything like that. But there's
Mm-hmm.
and so then you look at these multi-generational relationships, and as a pastor, you see it all the time. Sometimes you come alongside someone who's lost a parent, and it's like it was with my father. Sometimes someone's lost a parent, and all they want to do is throw things at the gravestone. And I do believe that none of this is above or beyond our God. And so when people wonder about my Calvinism, that's sort of a short way to say it, that that God is the great storyteller,
Mhm.
and that while I'm not a universalist, um, I don't know how God brings glory out of pain. But and with your big focus on C.S. Lewis, I mean, that is all over Lewis's life. I remember reading The Narnian, Alan Jacobs. It's
Mhm.
one of my favorite biographies of Lewis. I've read tons of Lewis biographies,
Yeah, that's
but
one of the best. It's
yeah,
good.
it really is. It's amazing. But and that one really sort of for me, because you grow up with Lewis and you grow up with Narnia, and he's sort of this saint, this Anglican saint out there, and then you read something like the Narnian, and you get a sense of, oh my goodness, what a difficult life,
Yes.
bunch of sin in his life. And you begin to and I read the Narnian at a particular time in my life where I was working on some of my own things, and it just had this sense of how God uses the really hard things. And sometimes it's the hard things done to us, sometimes it's the hard things we do to others or to ourselves. And how God, because then I recognize that the Lewis that has blessed this world so much was forged
Mhm.
in all of that
Mhm.
awfulness, the early death of his mother, the difficulty of relating to his father, this whatever on earth happened with the mother of his war buddy killed in the war. And
Mhm.
then, even his later relationship with Joy,
Mhm.
which was in some ways a beautiful relationship, but other ways, boy, there's
Messy.
some stuff in that relationship. Which, as a pastor, I mean, if you read it, you realize that one of his priest friends was like, I'm not going to bless this, and
Yeah.
he had reasons for it.
Yeah.
And, but God works through
Yeah.
all of this stuff, and out of that crafts this weird English Oxford Don who doesn't know children and is somehow left with boys he has to kind of raise when his father was the mom. You just look at all
Mhm.
of this and you say,
Hmm.
and people often see those hard things, and they say, well, I can't believe in God because of these hard things. And I always tell them, I can't not believe in God because of these hard things. If that
Yeah.
isn't the case, I can't take this world. And I've lived my
Yeah.
whole life in ministry
Mhm.
context of, if you want to know what I learned in the Dominican Republic, it was just
Mm.
that I go there as a North American missionary. We've got a great mission organization. We've got all of this stuff. And damn it, I can't help these people.
Mhm.
They are stuck and caught and in corners I can't get them out of. And even the ways that I see North Americans actually getting people out of that situation creates other deformities and problems that compound the problems. And
Right.
so any triumphalism in my working theology got wrung
Mhm.
out of me in that context. But at the same time, I saw that God was, I talked about this in my classical exam, and I remember one of the pastors in
Mhm.
that classes did not like what I had to say, but I didn't care at that point because I knew it. And that even in the midst of, for those Haitians living as illegals in the Dominican Republic, working the worst jobs, being political footballs often, living in crushing poverty on many different levels, God gave them joy.
Mhm.
Christian life came out of them. And I learned way more from those Haitians than I know I taught them in my 20s and 30s. Um, and so this is the God that I know, and this is the God that I see, and this is the God I want to try and bear witness to.
Right.
So, I really appreciate the fact that you did share the pain in your story, even though, you don't want to cry on TV and,
Mhm.
you don't want to do all of this. But
Mhm.
unless people see this out of real Christians,
Mhm.
they have no reason to believe any of the other crazy things we have to tell them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. as much as David Bentley Hart will drive me nuts sometimes. He helped me see fully. I don't know if you read his The Doors of the Sea, his book on the problem of evil, and then his Beauty of the Infinite. And basically saying what you said is when we approach our suffering and our sorrow and evil, we can't bring a mathematical kind of calculus because in that sense, there's no, and he'll talk about, the horrible rape of children who are, and then they're, there's no one-to-one good that makes up for that,
No.
right? It's horrific. But if we think about it in terms of story and art, and God is the great artist, and this is what he says, it's a beauty of the infinite. There's no one-to-one calculus. It is the abundant, overflowing, infinite beauty of God that can take all of our suffering and all of our sorrow and all of this and transform it into a story that is so glorious that once that end is revealed, right? And we experience it in our own life, right? My little bit of suffering, my little bit of hardship that broke my heart, and tore my life apart. But at the end of that story, when the goodness is revealed, which is my relationship, right, to the infinite God, to the resurrected God, it's worth it,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
In a way that is not a calculus, but an overcoming, an abundant glory that swallows up the darkness with the brightness of the light, right? And as we encounter that in our little stories, that's what gives us, right, the hope and the faith to hold out for other people when they're in the midst of their story, and for, the ultimate human story, that we've tasted it here in this way, and we've seen that it's real, and therefore it is reasonable and joyful to trust that all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well, right? And you're right, it's hard to tell those stories, but it's good and it's important. So thanks for giving me the chance to come and talk with you and get to know you a little bit more. It's fun to debate ideas, but at the end of the day, like, they need to be in the context of actual relationship, right?
Yep.
People that we know and care about.
Yep. Yep. Beautiful. Beautiful. Great. Any place, best place for people to find you, if you got anything you want to plug or anything like that?
Oh yeah. Well, I really do like Twitter. I know people love to hate on Twitter, and it is a cesspool, but I have a lot of great encounters. I just block the
Me
people
too.
that are terrible, and I have fun with the people that are great. And so that's where I'm most active. If people want to chat and spar with me a little bit, or know what I'm doing, if I've done a video or a class or posted something, it's best to find me at Twitter at
All right. I'll
Annie
put
L.
your
Crawford.
I'll put your Twitter thing below so people can find you. And thank you for coming on and spending the time, and again, and sharing yourself. And because I think, actually, even though these conversations are the least watched aspect of my channel, it is the most valuable, and it's really where the blessings are. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for that.
Thanks, Paul.
All right,
Thanks for
Annie, you
with you.
take care.
You
Bye
too.
bye.
Bye-bye.